Notre Dame and Penn State will get things kicked off. This will be 7:30 Eastern time on ESPN. This game will be Thursday. Very much looking forward to being on the call alongside Sean McDonough, Molly McGrath, and Katie George. This will be awesome. We hope that you'll tune in. It'll be live from Miami at 7:30. Notre Dame, about a 2-point favorite right now. The total somewhere around 45 or 46. Both Notre Dame and Penn State have 13 wins this year. That's the first time in their respective program histories. Each are looking for their first national championship since the 1980s. Notre Dame won in 88, like I referenced earlier. Penn State won it a couple years before that. That was in 1986. Notre Dame and Penn State are both making their sixth appearance in the Orange Bowl. Notre Dame last made it to the Orange Bowl in 1996, where they lost to Florida State 31-26. That was the 95 season, 96 Orange Bowl. And then Penn State, they made it in 2006. That was the 2005 season, and they beat Florida State in that matchup. Okay, should be awesome. Notre Dame, we'll start with them. Notre Dame has won 12 straight games overall. They fell to Northern Illinois, but they currently hold the longest active win streak in the FBS. What's amazing is that 9 consecutive games have been won by at least 10 points. That's their longest streak since 1949, when Frank Leahy won his fourth and final national championship with the program. Okay, Penn State's had a number of superlatives as well. A lot to be proud about if you're a Penn State fan. They made quick work of both Boise State and SMU en route to this first trip to the Final Four here in the College Football Playoff, in their first Final Four and their first college football playoff appearance. They're trying to become the first team since 2019 LSU to make the playoff for the first time and go on to win the Natty. Will be awesome to see. We'll see whether or not they can get it done. Question number 1 in this game, and if you're new to us here at Always College Football, we always ask a series of questions. These questions basically determine whether or not we think it's going to go a certain way. I'm on the call, so I won't make a pick for this game, but you can answer these questions yourself, like this one. Can Notre Dame continue to run the football? All right. If the answer is yes, that goes a long way towards helping Notre Dame win the championship, right? Win the game in this scenario. But we'll ask a series of questions, and we have a bunch for these two matchups. We've had a lot of time, and we're going to dive in as deep as we possibly can. Question number 1, can Notre Dame continue to run the football? Notre Dame won the Sugar Bowl despite gaining only 244 total yards. Now, we know that Notre Dame is a rushing attack. That's how they approach it. That's how they attack it. They pride themselves on being one of the best in the country and controlling the line of scrimmage and hitting you with a lot of different pieces in the run game. It's not just a 1-2 punch at running back. They also involve their quarterback, Riley Leonard. But against Georgia, they didn't have the dominant rushing yardage that they typically have. Now, they were still relatively effective. They didn't have a ton of negative yards. They didn't have a lot of lost yardage plays, but they also didn't create a lot of big plays and big explosives on the ground either. They had 154 rushing yards. That was their third fewest of the season. They averaged 4.2 yards per carry. That was their second worst output of the season. They had 0 rushing touchdowns, which is their fewest, obviously. And they only had 3 10-plus yard runs. That was their fewest as well. And all 3 of those 10-yard runs against Georgia came at the hands of Riley Leonard, who did have 7 first downs in the process running the football, but the passing game for him wasn't great, so we kind of had to do it all with his legs. Now, Jeremiah Love has been their best back all season long, super explosive. Going into the game against Georgia, he had found the end zone 13 consecutive games. He didn't. So that streak is now ended. And to make matters worse, he had just 7 touches. That was season low. He had just 21 scrimmage yards. So we'll see going into that game. He had 4 straight games where he went for over 125. Is that knee injury that had given him trouble a little bit against USC, forced him to leave the game early, lingering effects against Indiana, and ultimately against Georgia? Will he be at 100% for this matchup, or will he have to operate at less than 100%? Jadarian Price, in the event in which Love is not at 100%, he'll get a lion's share of the carries. He's an excellent back in his own right. He's the best back in country as far as yards after contact per carry, and he's excellent on the perimeter. So if this game becomes a game where you want some speed on the perimeter, Jadarian Price can deliver that. Now, Penn State's got to tackle really, really well. They did a great job against Boise State because this Notre Dame team, headlined by Jadarian Price, They average about 4 yards after contact per carry. That's the second best in the country, behind Penn State's last opponent, that was Boise State. So Penn State's been really, really good. They've done great in yards per rush, rushing yards per game, rushing touchdowns, and is coming off a dominant performance holding and containing Ashton Jeanty to a season-low 104 rushing yards. But this will be really important. Will they be able to stack the box the same way they did against Boise and find success? Can they do that against Notre Dame? We will find out. Question number 2, can Penn State continue to utilize the perimeter run? Now, since the Ohio State game, you have seen from Penn State's offensive staff, and in particular their offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, really lean into creating numbers and advantages by running the ball outside the tackles on the perimeter. Nearly half of their rushing attempts this year come outside the tackles. That's among the highest rates in the FBS. They have 51 carries of 10-plus yards outside the tackles. That's in the top 7 in the country. And they have over 1,700 yards outside the tackles. That's in the top 6 in the country. So you've seen a really strong commitment from Penn State to not just emphasize perimeter runs, but also emphasize multiple tight end formations and creating extra gaps for the defense to get their excellent tandem of running backs on the perimeter. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton are excellent. They do a great job. And they're really comfortable running stretch zone and really comfortable getting on the edge defensively or offensively. Question number 3, will Notre Dame's pressure create problems up front for Penn State? Now, Penn State's a little bit vulnerable in pass protection. Now, Notre Dame has had some challenges as far as their injuries are concerned. They're without Riley Mills, an outstanding and dominant defensive tackle who missed the game against Georgia after getting injured against Indiana, but they're also without 2 guys on the edges of the defense that could be really impactful as well. So what Notre Dame's had to do as a result, they've had to get a little bit more aggressive. See a little bit more blitz. Against Georgia, they blitzed about half of the dropbacks that their quarterback dropped back. That's their highest blitz percentage on the season for Al Golden, the defensive coordinator. They also knew that they probably have to create some athletic advantages. They have Howard Cross, who's a little bit undersized at about 285 pounds. They have Donovan Heinisch, who's about 280 pounds. Those are their defensive tackles. They're not huge, but they're really athletic and they're really disruptive. Can that create some problems for Penn State along the offensive line? Irish finished that game against Georgia with 4 sacks. That's their second most in the game this season. They had 8 against Florida State. So to think they're without a few of their most disruptive weapons, and yet it did not affect their production. Their linebacker stepped up, their defensive line stepped up, and they made a ton of plays. Can they do so again against Penn State? Question number 4. Will Notre Dame be forced to throw the ball downfield? Now, Riley Leonard, their quarterback, is not a guy that's going to be just taking shot after shot after shot over and over and over again downfield. His average depth of target is under 7 yards, which is around 111th in the country as far as how often he's taking chances on the downfield throws. Now, he's got good weapons. I actually am pretty impressed with what I've seen from the growth and development of this Notre Dame wide receiver core. I think Jordan Faison has come on in a big way. He's got a lot of speed. Bo Collins has been very steady. He's a big physical receiver. Most of his work is done underneath, but he can get behind the defense. Has a couple of deep ball touchdowns this year. And then Mitchell Evans, their tight end, who's come on really strong down the stretch as he's gotten a little healthier, getting further and further removed from that knee injury. Now, Penn State's going to play a lot of man coverage. That's what they do. Penn State is not a defense that's going to do a ridiculous amount of disguises in their coverage. You kind of, what you see is what you get. I know I got to win matchups. I know I got to win one-on-ones. And if you look at Penn State, a lot of the opponents that they've played against have not really been capable of taking advantage of some downfield throws. Opposing quarterbacks are averaging just 6.5 air yards per attempt downfield against Penn State. That's the shortest distance in the FBS by opposing quarterbacks. So teams are not taking chances. Teams have not tried. Will Notre Dame have to create some big plays offensively? That'll be a big question in the game. Question number 5. Can Notre Dame's man defense contain Penn State's weapons? Now, it's pretty much all about stopping Tyler Warren. When you think about the receiver core and the weapons that Penn State has on the perimeter, like Tyler Warren's just absolutely ridiculous. And the wide receivers for Penn State account for just about a third of the targets. It's not some ridiculous number. They're among the lowest utilized wide receivers in college football. But when you look at Tyler Warren and all the productivity that he has this year, the guy's got like 98 catches, 1,100 yards. He's ridiculous, okay? So couple the fact that these wide receivers are going to be working against excellent corners, Leonard Moore and Christian Gray on one side or the other. These are really, really good guys. And while people have looked at Christian Gray and said, okay, Christian Gray has been targeted and teams have tried to be aggressive in his direction, the results have been somewhat mixed. Some teams have had great success, like USC did. Some teams haven't had so much success because Christian Gray was up to the task. They're going to go after him. But Leonard Moore on the other side, the true freshman, he's been completely locked down all year. So it probably means your external wide receivers, the guys on the outside, they're not going to be super impactful in this game. So Tyler Warren's going to have to win some one-on-one matchups. And who doesn't want to watch the John Mackey Award winner that goes to the best tight end against an All-American safety in Xavier Watts and Adon Schuler, who's one of the best cover safeties in the country. Those two guys will probably switch off responsibilities from time to time, but more often than not, they're going to draw a very, very heavy lift. That's covering Tyler Warren in one-on-one. And both those guys, super, super athletic. Will they be up to the task? And then finally, when you look at just the ridiculous productivity we've seen from Tyler Warren this year at tight end, it's unbelievable. And the guy is absolutely incredible. So just keep in mind, this is a guy that's got 5 receiving touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, a passing touchdown. You name it, this guy's done it on the football field this year. He's been outstanding. And if you can somewhat limit his productivity, you have a chance to slow down this passing attack. Now, it's not easy, but it is the all points bulletin when trying to defend Penn State. The other guy you got to be really mindful of is Amari Evans. He's got great speed over the top. He's number 5. He always seems to get behind the defense. It doesn't matter how far off they're playing. He's going to climb. He's going to get behind him, and you're going to be able to create big plays because of the perimeter rushing attack and the play action passing attack that has now improved drastically for this Penn State offense. Question number 6. Will Abdul Carter be able to go? And if he can't, what does that mean for Penn State's pass rush? Now, the Nittany Lions pressure quarterbacks on about 41% of the opposing quarterback's dropbacks. That's about, top 15, top 16 in the country. Right? But the most dynamic player by a pretty considerable margin on Penn State's defense is Abdul Carter. He's probably going to be a top 5 pick, top 10 pick, plays multiple spots on the defense. He's played off the ball. He's now moved up to the end man on the line of scrimmage, but they'll move him around. They'll find matchups for him, and they'll find opportunities for him to create looks against the opposing offense. The guy's got nearly 40 career tackles for loss. He's got 22 career sacks and has forced 5 career fumbles. According to James Franklin, Abdul Carter has a, quote, great mentality. I don't know what that means. Because mentality is one thing, but can he physically go? It's a left shoulder injury. The doctors were looking at it. We don't know what part of the body it is. We know it's left arm, left shoulder, left elbow, whatever it may be. Just all I know is that he went out in the second quarter against Boise and was unable to return. So at this point, it does appear like that's going to be a game time decision. But if he can go, that would be massive, because he has led the defense this year with 11 sacks and 21 and a half tackles for loss. So we'll see. If he can't go, that means Denai Dennis Sutton is another key piece. He wears number 33. He's also had a career season, 6.5 sacks, not nearly as productive as Abdul Carter, but of late he's been pretty good. He's got 2.5 sacks in the playoff by itself, including 1.5 against SMU. You also are going to have to keep an eye on Max Granville, who is probably going to fill the void of Carter's third down specific role. He was originally part of the 2025 recruiting class, but reclassified. And he played just 11 snaps against Boise State, but could be a guy that sees his productivity increase. And then Amid Vanover, who is number 15, who has great length at the position as well. So we'll be they're very deep on the edges of the defense. So if Abdul Carter can't go, it's not a deal breaker, but obviously his impact and his presence will always be felt when he's on the field. So hopefully for Penn State, he'll be good to go. Question number 7. Who will win the turnover battle? Notre Dame leads the FBS with 31 takeaways this season. Those takeaways have led to an FBS leading 148 points off of turnovers. All right, the only game this year where the Fighting Irish did not record a takeaway and did not win the turnover differential was when they lost to Northern Illinois. That was week 2. They were -2 in the turnover margin that day, and they did not record a takeaway. So turnovers have been very impactful for Notre Dame. And you think about just in this playoff run by itself, okay? First game against Indiana. Indiana's got the ball in the red zone. Missed throw by Rourke. Interception by Xavier Watts. One play later, 98 yards out the gate by Jeremiah Love. Think back to the game against Georgia. End of half situation. Gunnar Stockton drops back. RJ Oben strips it. It's recovered by Tui Alamaka. One play later, touchdown, Notre Dame to Bo Collins in the end zone. So they've done a great job of being opportunistic, but also paying off those short field opportunities as well. And then for Penn State, they forced 7 turnovers in their last 2 games. They got 3 against SMU, 4 against Boise State, including a couple pick sixes against the Mustangs in Happy Valley. So with these 2 teams, knowing these 2 teams, it's highly likely that a turnover could certainly shift things into that team's favor. So a big mistake is something that you absolutely have to avoid. And like I said, I will not make a call in this game, but we hope that you'll tune in 7:30 Eastern time on ESPN. For Sean McDonough, myself, Molly McGrath, and Katie George, who will have the call.